Welcome to Awakening into Life, where we host an ongoing series of conversations regarding the nature of non-duality, self-realization, and the embodiment of awakening, all offered freely from the heart of Bradley. In this session, we will be continuing our Campaign of Consciousness series, specifically talking about paying attention to synchronicity. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Tonight, we're getting together to go through session 5 in the Campaign of Consciousness series. And tonight, we'll specifically be talking about that was last week. This week, we will be talking about paying attention to synchronicity. And as I've said in previous sessions, this is one where it's important to take what's meant for you and to leave the rest behind, right? To meet the information being shared on your own terms in your own way, to make it uniquely yours. I also want to remind everyone that these sessions are hosted freely on the Zoom platform, and we do record them. We also broadcast these sessions on Facebook Live. So if you would prefer to keep your privacy or anonymity, you're welcome to turn your camera off, to turn your microphone off, to keep your privacy if you like. It's entirely up to you. And for those of you who may be participating via Facebook, if you have questions along the way, please feel free to type them in, and I'll see if I can get to them if I notice them. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I'm sure that if not, by now somebody would have said something. So synchronicity for me is really the most enjoyable part of this series. Many different people who've gone through this process of what we might call or refer to as awakening have come through the doorway in a variety of different ways. The realization itself is similar, but the way that it was arrived at. And for me, the doorway really was synchronicity. I was very hard-headed. I was not spiritual, nor was I interested in spirituality. And in order for life to get my attention, it had to be pretty straightforward. It had to be pretty undeniable. It had to be pretty immediate. And synchronicity, depending on how strongly the universe uses this mechanism of communication to draw you into itself, it can be very profound. It can be earth-shattering and eye-opening in ways that nothing else can. So let's start first of all by having a short conversation on what synchronicity is, what that word means, what it's pointing toward. The term itself is largely coined by Jung, by Carl Jung, who was a father of modern psychology, but also a deeply awakened mystic in his own right, who set out to bring these two worlds together. And as I understand the story, he was working with a client or with a patient in his office, and she was describing this dream that she had been having about this type of beetle, this very specific, very rare type of beetle. And as Jung was listening to her, he started to become irritated by a tapping at the window. And in order for him to be fully present with his client, he excused himself for a moment. He went over to the window and he opened it up. And there was the exact beetle that the woman was describing, this rare beetle, basically banging on the window. And so for him in that moment, it became apparent that there's a way in which seemingly disparate events may connect or have a connective quality or some sort of connective tissue that is here to invite us, to show us, to reveal, to sort of help us through. I like to say that synchronicity is you as the universe, or you as consciousness, or you as being, right? You as God, whatever words work for you, but it's you revealing yourself to yourself. That's really what synchronicity is. It's the love language of God, the love language of consciousness. It's the way in which life and its infinite beauty and perfection is revealed. Now, these synchronicities, they can come in a variety of different ways. There's really no limit to how they can show up. And you can be, I'll use a couple of examples myself. I remember one day I was driving along the street. I was on my way to give a talk somewhere, and I was running late. And as I was feeling, right, allowing for that sense of panic or anxiety of being late, right, a car drives past me and the license plate is never late, right? I remember when I first came to Florida, and I was looking for work in my primary field as a security professional in IT security. And I went to work. I spent a lot of time talking to people in my sessions about how we are all aspects of the divine, right, so to speak. One way of phrasing it. And so my very first job that I landed when I moved to Orlando was with a company called Aspect, and my boss's name was Divine. So these are just very small examples. Larger examples, very profoundly significant examples, right, might be a moment when, you know, you're working with something in your experience, or you're aware of something in your experience of yourself. And as you're in this awareness of what's present for you, a song comes on the radio, right? And it speaks to exactly what it is that's present for you in this moment. Another example, and I'll build on this one a little bit. Another example might be, again, let's say you're thinking through an issue. You have a problem that you're trying to solve with your mind, and you've decided to go for a walk, and you're going to the store. And as you're walking towards the store, there's somebody who's walking towards you, and they're wearing a t-shirt, and that t-shirt has words on it that are directly for you. There's no getting away from it. They speak directly to what it is that you're working on through this mental thought process of your mind. So here you are, you're walking, working, and here comes this other person with this shirt, and they've got this message for you. It speaks right to what you need. Clarifies something for you. And there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of examples of synchronicities, whether they're small or large, or maybe even start to look almost more like a miracle. I want to build on this one though. Synchronicity isn't just here as a way to get our attention, although it can certainly do that. It can get our attention, or it can serve as a reminder, or as I like to say sometimes, synchronicity can be like God winking at you. Yeah. Or synchronicity can be something that reveals, right? Shows you something that needs your attention. But more deeply than the play or the presence of these synchronicities, these seeming coincidences that are not coincidences at all, beneath them, there's an opportunity to recognize an underlying perfection that is present in everything exactly as it is. For instance, when we're walking to the store and we're working on that mental process and a person comes walking in the opposite direction wearing the shirt that speaks to us, take a moment and ask, why were you on the street at that exact moment? Why was that person on that street at exactly that moment? What inspired them to wear that shirt that morning? What inspired them to buy that shirt when they purchased it? What about that person actually having to have been born in order for that person to be there for that moment? And their parents had to be born, and so on and so forth, until we arrive at the moment of the Big Bang, which is nothing more than an infinite mystery beyond which we cannot penetrate with science or mind. How many things had to be in perfect alignment, in perfect harmony, in perfect synchronicity for that moment to be what that moment was? Now, I said in the very beginning of this series, in the first session where we were talking about tilting in the direction of awakening, right? What is an awakening? A fundamental shift in perception. A recognition that beyond the limits of conditioned language, of words and concepts and meaning and ideas and beliefs and views, beyond all of the structures and systems of the mind, there is this aware space, this aware presence, this beingness, this presence, this quality or this capacity of bare cognition that in and of itself is a complete mystery unto itself, because anything that we might say about this presence or beingness or awareness is actually arising within it. Anything that we can try to use to point at it isn't actually going to get us to it, because it's on the outside, on the outer edge of the words. It's just sort of dancing at the edge of our ability to touch it. And yet, through this process of seeing through the veil of language and arriving at this mystery, we also see that there are no borders or boundaries. There is no separateness to be found anywhere. Because the lines that we draw in life, where an object becomes an object, right? A chair becomes a chair only because we've been conditioned to see it as a chair. A person is only a person because we've been conditioned to see them as a person. Ourselves, as we experience ourselves, we only see ourselves in terms of how we have been conditioned. But beyond all of that, beyond all the borders and boundaries, all of the imaginary lines that we draw in life, is this infinite mystery, this infinite being, this infinite presence. And we could say that it's all one. Now, when we step into it, when we step into this oneness, even oneness itself is made empty. So the one becomes zero, we could say. It's crazy math, but it's the way it works. Because even if we were to say, oh, it's all one, right? Even that language, it's all one, is an appearing or an arising within the one that we are. So we can't even really say that. Not really. It's a way that we're connecting with it as a mental construct, as a concept, so that we can invite it into our lives and we can embody the understanding that emerges as part of it. Without these imaginary borders and boundaries and limitations in place, things like time and space and form have no inherent existence. None whatsoever. There's no more arbitrary dividing line between this and that, between yesterday and today. There's just this. It's all this, everything, all of it is this one that we are, beyond the words that we might use to point to it. And this one that we are is everything and knows exactly what it's doing. It has its own intelligence, its own capacity. This isn't something that we can really reach into with the mind and sit here and say, oh, the universe is intelligent. I wonder what its IQ is. That's not at all what I'm talking about. I am saying that the entire manifestation of phenomenal experience has an intelligent aliveness to it. That intelligent aliveness is what makes manifest all of the realms of name and form. It brings about all phenomenal experience. It gives birth to the layers of separateness that we experience in our experience of duality, whether it's duality from this unconscious orientation or an enlightened duality that's recognized from the point of view of wholeness. So synchronicities, when we experience them, right? If we just experience them in the moment, we can say, oh, that was beautiful, or oh, that was crazy, or oh, wow, that's really bothersome, right? It can take many different forms. It can have many different manifestations, but we can greet it and we can say, oh, isn't that interesting? But if we look at synchronicity a little bit more deeply, and we start to really inquire into, again, all of the things that need to happen within the experience or in the realm of name and form in order for a particular synchronistic moment to arise, where do you find its beginning? If you can find no beginning, then things like cause and effect begin to shift a little bit for us. They begin to take on new meaning. Many non-dual teachers will talk about this is causeless. It's a causeless reality. In this causeless reality, everything is always exactly as it must be. Always. Because again, we're not separate entities. We're not separate persons. Each here in separateness, having separate experiences, having separate lives. That is the way it looks when we're conditioned into those systems and structures of language. But beyond them, in the recognition of our wholeness, it's all one thing, everything, from the chair to the door to the table to the person to the baby crying to whoever you might be struggling with in your life, whatever it is. It's all of it. All of it is a manifestation of this one that we are beyond the systems and structures and limitations of language. And knows what it's doing. How could it not? It has the capacity to bring about these moments of synchronistic clarity that can dump us on our head, challenge our views, break us down, fundamentally shift our conscious perception of the world. And then when we have those moments, boom, this synchronicity, this happened, and this really broke me wide open. And you're thinking, oh, wow, I know what this was about. It showed me what I needed. Oh, that's great, right? That's wonderful. But what happens 2 weeks later when you're sitting with someone who starts to talk about the exact same thing that you were dealing with? Now you're prepared to be present for them and their need. And you discover that this moment that you had over here in the past, the quote unquote past, was actually preparing you to be present for another in a very specific way. You are a moment of synchronicity for that person because of your experience. And without your experience, you could not be that moment of synchronicity for that person. This is how we begin to sort of recognize and embody a faith and trust in the way things are. This is the most important, this is the most essential message of awakening. The deep recognition, the abiding knowing that all things are exactly as they must be, always. Many of the tools and the techniques and the things that we look at from the perspective of the spiritual journey are here to help us move in the direction of surrender. This separate self, this separate entity, the I, me, mine, that claims ownership over its life, is surrendering to the greater whole, to the intelligent aliveness. There's a disappearing act that's happening on the part of the person as this awakening process occurs. Slowly but surely, the person is being dissolved in this infinite mystery. Being dissolved in love is another way of saying it. So these moments of synchronicity are also serving as invitations into that process of dissolving, of letting go, of allowing, of having that faith and trust in the way things are, because you're not separate and apart from anything, anywhere, at any time, ever, and your role in life is perfectly in accord with what life requires of you, what life needs of you, what life created you for. The very function of your existence is an imperative present within the great harmony of motion. Just as you are. When we say there's nowhere to go, there's nothing to do, there's no one to be, this whole journey into awakening or enlightenment is a farce. It's because you're already this. You're already this. Whether you know it or don't know it, whether you've seen it or you haven't seen it. I was speaking with someone the other day about the fact that when we see this for ourselves, what often happens is a great burst of laughter. What more can you do than laugh when you realize that your whole life you've been holding on to yourself as the central concept or central theme in your life? You've made it all about you the whole time. And suddenly you realize, oh, this me that I thought I was, it doesn't have the same substance that I thought it did. I can see the beauty of what's really true. I can see the depth, the quality of aliveness that's present in all of life, in everyone, everywhere, no matter who they are, no matter what they're doing. Now, of course, the mind will often respond to that kind of a pointing with its conditioned judgments. This is also the part in the conversation where I usually tell people that just because life is perfect as it is, doesn't give you license to be an asshole. This is sort of an important thing to keep in mind, right? Because I know, and I'm sure those of you who have participated in non-dual communities, especially perhaps on places like Facebook, where you will see people who claim to embody the understanding or to be present in it, or however they might articulate their own awakeness, right? And at the same time, they're busy condemning everyone. Oh, you're having thoughts, don't have thoughts. If you just don't have thoughts, everything will be good. You're the one creating all the problems with all your thoughts. You know, this is an intermediate step in the process of awakening, and a lot of people get stuck there. In my own process of teaching this way of awakening, first of all, as I've said, if you look at the way this series is laid out, it's subtle. This is an indirect method of arriving at sort of understanding by using the mind to sharpen the mind until it can pierce the mind. It's called jnana yoga, the yoga of the mind, or the yoga of wisdom. It's one way of expressing it. It brings us to this place where we're able to say yes to life in a very different way. So it's very subtle and indirect. But it also challenges us. It challenges the mental systems and structures of mind. Somewhere in there, I lost my train of thought. So when that happens for me, I generally just sort of take a moment to see what actually wants to come forward. And I think right now, the best thing to do is just take a moment to ask other people here who are participating your own thoughts, your own experiences so far, your own experiences with synchronicity. Just open it up for a few moments. All right.
Hi.
Hi.
I guess I'd take the first stab at it.
Of course,
Since everyone's quiet. I could definitely relate to some of the synchronicities you were describing today. Tonight. I mean, I used to just kind of view them as coincidences and then just kind of be like, well, how ironic. And then some of them were a bit like, whoa, was that wink from God that you described? Yeah, so they've been quite present. And then I guess the more aware I became of them, the more I started noticing the sense to you, Brad. Once that awareness kind of came forth, you'd notice a lot more of the universe's messages, so to say. Yeah, but you know, that just kind of leaves me all to, okay, so what do they all mean?
Yes.
What do they all mean?
So that's a really wonderful point, right? And it's a really wonderful question. And it sort of does bring me back to where I lost my train of thought a little bit.
Oh, good on me.
So I appreciate that. Thank you. So, you know, isn't it interesting that when we do have these experiences, right, synchronistic experiences that, you know, can be quite profound, they can take our breath away. Right? And our tendency, the natural tendency of the mind, is then to want to give it meaning. Right? To want to give it a shape.
Right.
Yeah. So it's important, right, from the perspective of mind to see these synchronicities, to witness them, right, to be aware of them. And if we find ourselves inquiring into them, to do so, right, because they're often occurring specifically for the purpose of inviting us into this process of inner examination. But at a certain point, these synchronicities, you know, you begin to recognize that the mind is actually asserting itself in the process of giving shape and meaning to the synchronistic experience itself. And, you know, when we talk about, for instance, in Christianity, right, Jesus was saying, you know, not to depend on signs, right? Right? And so that's really what these synchronicities are, right? Is they are signs, right? So it's sort of like I was speaking with someone the other day, and we were talking about how sort of in the beginning, this can be awe-inspiring, right? I mean, to witness these synchronicities can be incredible. I know for me, it was just, it can never be repeated. But the mind is going to want to try to get more of it. You know, it's like, okay, God just spoke to me. Oh my goodness gracious, this is amazing. What a miracle. Keep talking, God, keep talking. Show me more, teach me more, give me more, more. Right? But the truth of it is that God really speaks in silence. And ultimately, we're sort of, that's the slide we're getting on and going down as a part of this process, is surrendering into that silence. Okay? So those synchronicities, they come in order to shake us and break us, to challenge our perception of things. But over time, we have to sort of surrender those too and let go of those too. And just sort of acknowledge, now I know for me, and for the first year, my life was, I was swimming in a sea of synchronicities. I was in an ocean, and everything was always singing and speaking and clarifying, and it was just incredible. But then over time, I learned what I needed to. I saw what I was supposed to see as a part of that process. And then slowly but surely, they began to evaporate, right? And I was forced to stand on my own 2 feet without any signs. And so that's sort of because we're coming right down into the silence and the stillness and the quiet of our true being, of God's own being, right? And there's not in that place, you know, it doesn't have the same quality to it. I see synchronicities now and I go, oh, that's cute. Oh, that's sweet. Oh, thank you. It's just like a wonderful little play. I know that there's another story, and I'm using these stories because I know we've had some conversations about Christianity. So, but I know that Jesus said that God used to play with him as a boy. You know, and I look at it in that film, in that fashion, right? You know, this is how God plays. I mean, it's all really, I mean, all of life is how God plays, but in these moments where there's this revealing, you know, through these synchronistic experiences that defy logic. So it is very interesting how we sort of tend to look at giving meaning to these things that appear, and we should, because I never want, I never believe or see or suggest or recommend a process of dismissiveness, right? That's one of the reasons why I don't really spend time in a lot of the non-dual groups, because people stuck in the intermediate stage are very much, they're distancing and dismissing, and they're basically denying life. Right? They're busy in the transcendent, they're busy being in the transcendent absolute state of no mind. Yeah. But mind itself is just another piece of language. It's another dividing line. So when you say, oh, I'm in no mind, there's no room for mind in me. You know, there's no room in me for thought. That's a denial. It's a distancing. So we're being given this opportunity to really embody life rather than push it away. And so people in the intermediate stage will tend towards that. But I really look at wanting to convey the importance of using these experiences when they come up for inquiry and investigation, and to let them carry us through what we need to see, to show us, to reveal to us what needs our attention. And over time, naturally and effortlessly, our relationship with synchronicity will evolve or mature and take on, it'll have a new quality to it, a new kind of relationship will begin to form. So slowly but surely through our own experience, we begin to, okay, I'm not dependent upon the presence of synchronicities in order to live my life. I know for a period of time, and I know I've encountered other people who have gone through this as well, but for a period of time, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do unless God told me where to go. Unless the universe gave me a sign. I didn't know what to do. I'd just sit there and wait. Okay, you tell me what to do next. You tell me what to think. You tell me who to be. But that isn't ultimately what this journey's about. Ultimately, you know, again, if we get to that point within ourselves where we recognize that what we are is always true, then with or without the presence of synchronicities, we are still this. We are still God's own being, or the presence of being, or consciousness. That's what we are. Still, always. What we're never not. And so then are there synchronicities or are there not synchronicities? Do they have meaning? Do they not have meaning? I don't know. I'm just along for the ride. So those are a few things that come to mind when you bring up the way, you know, that we try to give them meaning.
Yeah, I mean, even to the point where it's almost like I started receiving them as confirmation.
Right.
So, okay, this is not, there wasn't that wow factor anymore. It was more of a, oh, just, you know, receiving that extra confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
I think one was a dream. Had a couple of really vivid dreams. And that was, I don't know, are dreams considered synchronicities as well? Like when they're very vivid dreams where it's almost like a message there. And well, thank you. I'll let someone else speak.
Well, just really quickly, I mean, dreams are such dreams are another beautiful way in which things are opened up. I see that we have another comment here as well regarding dreams, right? So I don't want to try to get into sort of a scientific analysis of dreams or start to get into, you know, dream state analysis or any of that kind of stuff. But just sort of at a basic level, just again, recognizing that life is living itself through each and every one of us. And in order to be in any given moment what life needs us to be, life shapes us and molds us. Everything's interconnected, everything's intertwined, right? So the moment that we had 10 moments ago, it gave rise to this moment. They're intrinsically one, right? Yes, especially when we really start to dissolve the concept of time. And so the dreams themselves are another way that we are shaped and molded, right? It's not necessarily even so much that we have work to do, though we may, or a lesson to learn, though we may. But whatever it is that we're looking at, or whatever lesson it is that we're learning, it's because this movement of consciousness is bringing about those conditions. It's bringing about those circumstances. And it uses everything. You go wash your hands. That's consciousness, and there's something happening in that moment. You have a dream. That's consciousness, and there's something happening in that moment. And especially when we consider how we may wake up the next morning after we've had particularly vivid dreams, and we can see that experientially there's some sort of shift, whether it has a positive or a negative connotation to it or quality to it. That's a little bit different. But what we recognize is these dreams, they are inviting us. They're giving us insight and preparing us to be present with life in the way that we need to be present with life. To serve life, to serve life. Each and every one. That's what we're here for, to serve life. That's what love is. That's what surrender is, ultimately. To serve life. To recognize, right now, in this moment, I'm serving life. Right now, right here, in this moment. Whether you're, out there on a soup line on Thanksgiving Day offering food to the homeless, or you're sitting on the can with a newspaper. It doesn't matter. This is all what's happening. This is all life bringing us to that place of service, shaping us so that we can be of service in the way that life needs us to be. Not our imagination, not in sitting around going, here's how I'm going to save the world. That's just more mental construct. But just, I'm serving life. So this brings up, again, using dreams, but this brings up something that's very simple and very straightforward and very useful. I encounter in spiritual circles a lot of people, especially New Age and New Thought communities, who want to talk a lot about purpose. The purpose of my life. And the purpose in most people's minds is very grandiose. When I'm talking about being of service to life, I'm talking about recognizing that your only purpose in life is to be present with and to serve this moment. If you're sitting here and you're drinking a glass of water, your purpose, your whole purpose in life is to drink the glass of water. That's it. It's no more, no less. The mind loves to find meaning and purpose. The mind loves to have a grandiose plan or grandiose strategy. You know, it knows exactly what it wants to accomplish, what it wants to see, what it wants to do. The mind is a wonderful storyteller. But if you're just here and present in this moment, and you're of service in this moment, serving this moment, whatever this moment asks of you, that's your purpose. You don't need to go chasing purpose. Purpose finds you. Because again, life knows what it's doing. Life has this quality of perfection present within its expression of itself. And so whatever you're doing right now in this moment, that's your purpose, always. So if we're dreaming, our purpose is to be the dream. And if we wake up and we're shaped in a particular way, or we begin to make certain decisions in our lives dependent upon the quality or nature of the dream, that is our purpose. And these things are happening, these things are occurring in order to mold and shape us so that we can be in service in that way, in the way that life needs us to be of service. When I say things like, I'm just along for the ride, I really mean that. That is exactly how I live my life. In each and every moment, there's only this one moment, this continuous, infinite moment. I'm surrendered into it. I recognize the beauty of its perfection. I honor the intelligence. I'm surrendered into the intelligence of life. My only meaning, my only purpose is found in what's right here, right now, as life lives itself through this expression. My life is very relaxed for the most part, very contented. Because again, if we're not busy if we're not trying to serve some grandiose plan anymore, and instead we're just serving the moment, then there's a great contentment and a great relaxation that becomes possible. So I jumped over dreams a little bit there, but you know, that's just one example of how this happens. One example. Now, earlier when I was losing my thought, I was talking about recognizing that the perfection of life, or understanding that life has a perfection to it, isn't a license to be an asshole. one thing that can happen for people we can become so dependent on synchronistic expression, and we can become dependent upon the idea or the notion or the belief in life's perfection. And we can begin to mentalize or rationalize a plethora of excuses for poor behavior. You know, there are people who can be very ugly, and this is what I was talking about earlier before I lost my train of thought. There are people who can be very ugly about things, very mean, do things that really they don't feel like love. I will say that there's love present in everything as it is, so I'm not judging it. But what I am suggesting is that if we adopt the excuse of perfection as the reason for our bad behavior, I'm just going to be an asshole because life has chosen to make me an asshole so that I can be here to challenge everybody and make everybody miserable so they'll wake up and realize what love is. Well, a person who is playing that role in life, I would suggest, is here to teach us how to love them despite themselves, how to be patient with them, and how to understand that they are operating from their own misconceptions and misperceptions and misunderstandings, caught in an intermediate stage of realization. There's probably a tremendous amount of pain and suffering and trauma present in a person who is caught in that state. And they're not even willing, they're in no way, shape, or form are they willing to touch emotion with a 10-foot pole, because there's so much there, so much untapped. It's been stomped down. They don't even know where to begin. It's like if I were to open that, it would explode. So I'd rather just be transcendent than present. I'd rather live in the absolute rather than the relative, because in the relative, I have to relate. I have to relate to my experience, relate to my emotions, relate to my feelings, relate to my life. So a lot of people in non-dual circles will adopt life is perfect as an excuse for things that perhaps they're not really the best way of engaging. Again, I'm trying to make sure that I'm saying this without putting any real judgment on it, because even someone who is in that place is still life's perfection, is still exactly who they are meant to be in that moment, right? I know that all the times that I've encountered these people, they've always taught me something very beautiful about who not to be, of how not to be. And so I see them with eyes of love because they are my teacher. Okay? But when I'm working in the role of teacher and inviting people into this understanding, it's also incumbent upon me to say, while life is perfect and there is no separate self to be found anywhere, and the I, me, mine is illusory, and only God is the doer of all doings, only consciousness, that's all there is. To say, and at the same time that all of that is true, it's also true to say that there is a responsibility present in your experience of yourself to work within yourself, to open yourself up more deeply, to operate more fully from this position of love, to clear the mind and to open the heart every day. Every day. And if you find yourself caught in a place where you're operating from what we could call poor behavior, right? You do something that really might not should have done, right? To not get sort of into this place of guilt and shame, of self-judgment, but to go, okay, I see how in that moment I was serving life. I recognize that there's something in what occurred that was necessary for the other people involved, if there were other people involved, and I can see how there was something in it for me. What am I taking away from it? Not to beat ourselves up, but to ask, what can I take from this? What can I use as a part of this experience in order to clear my mind and in order to open my heart more deeply? Not beating ourselves with a stick saying, why do I keep getting it wrong? Why can't I do it right? And instead adopting a mindset that says, next time I'm going to really look at this more closely and more deeply and more carefully. And maybe I'll get it wrong next time again. Maybe I'll get this wrong again for the rest of my life. But I'm going to endeavor to be aware of the patterns of thought and behavior that are present in my experience of myself, so I can give them the appropriate attention. So I can take ownership for my relationship with myself and ownership of my relationship with life. And to do so loosely. To do so loosely and gently and tenderly, with great love and great compassion. Love is present in everything exactly as it is. There's no denying that fact. So invite that understanding into, I got this wrong. And I mean, this is daily stuff, right? You've got kids running around the house and the kids are doing crazy stuff. And you find yourself getting angry at your child and you raise your voice at your child. That's not who you want to be. Most of us would not wake up each morning going, I wonder how many times I'm going to get to yell at the kids today. Oh, goody, right? We don't operate in that place. We go to bed at night going, man, I can't believe I yelled at the kids again. What's wrong with me? That's more what happens with most of us. Or you're at work and you have a relationship with somebody that you just can't stand. They know how to push all your buttons. Or a family member who knows how to push all your buttons. And you respond, you react, you find yourself triggered as a result of an interaction. And you operate out of that triggering and you go, ah! Well, later on when you have some time to yourself, go, man, I've got to pay attention to these triggers. And do so gently and tenderly, lovingly, with compassion. Not beating yourself up, not using it as another way to condemn yourself, but just as a way to connect with yourself, to say, where's this coming from? What need is being unmet here in my presence, in my experience of myself? What need is not being met here? And can I meet it here in myself? So then when somebody else does something, you can just be, okay, here I am. I'm right here. All my needs are already being met within my experience of myself because it's all an emergence of the heart. I can be present with this person or that person. I can be present with this situation or that situation. I can be present with my thoughts and behaviors in relation to those things. And I can see how love is present in the dynamics of everything as it is, but I'm also doing so in a way that takes responsibility for it in a loving way. Not rationalizing it as an excuse. So synchronicity, as I've said, synchronicity paves the way into the recognition or the realization of life's perfection. But then once you begin to sort of attune to life's perfection, then you have to sort of figure out how to navigate. And there's no checklist. There are thousands of teachers and thousands of books out there, all offering their version of a checklist. But the bottom line is your situation and circumstances are going to be unique to you and entirely contextual. And if you try to bring a checklist into everything, what do you do when there's no checkbox for that particular situation? You panic, you freak out. You go into some other mode of self-judgment and self-blame and guilt and all of that. But if you don't have a checklist, if you just say, look, you know, I'm just here now. My purpose in life is to serve this moment, right here, right now, to just be of service to this moment and what life is asking of me in this moment. That's it. It can shift in a big and profound way. And there's not a lot, for me in my experience, there is not a lot of self-condemnation at all for anything ever. Even if I get something entirely wrong by someone else's perception, my understanding, I know where I'm living. I know where I'm coming from. I know what is true in my being. No one can challenge or take that away because it is my direct and immediate experience, not someone else's perception or projection. So when someone comes to me with a judgment, I'm just here and present in my own heart and present in my own experience of myself. Maybe I didn't get it right. Maybe I did get it wrong. Maybe I could have done better. But what I know is I'm of service right here, and I know where my heart is. And I'm content to let life do what life is going to do. Let life use me in whatever way life is going to use me. And I may not understand it, or I may not agree with it. I may not prefer it. But I'm always looking. I'm always paying attention. I'm always willing to see. I know my girlfriend Lisa, when she talks sometimes about coming at life with a checklist and how that doesn't really work. Those are the kinds of things I spoke of last week where, you know, we end up becoming disillusioned. We end up encountering pain and suffering and misery, and it causes a disillusionment, a dissatisfaction. And then we're sort of forced to meet the moment in another way, a different way. And then we find ourselves on this spiritual path, and we acquire all this spiritual knowledge. And then perhaps at a certain point, we realize, gosh, darn it, even the spiritual knowledge doesn't work. I read thousands of books and listened to thousands of videos, and I'm still screwed up. I'm still getting it wrong. I still don't know what the hell I'm doing. Maybe there's a different way on top of that. And that's usually where people end up starting to investigate this sort of non-dual path a little bit more. Right? The sacred heart of every tradition. This is what is espoused in the Christian mystics and monastics. This is what's, you know, present in the Sufis. This is what Taoism expresses. This is what the deeper aspects of Buddhism are all about. Stoicism in its original form, right? They all point in the same direction. You go read any of these ancient texts or texts by beings who really understood it. This is what we're talking about. This sacred mystery. and how to live it, how to walk in the darkness. I think there's a book, St. John of the Cross, and that's pretty much it. A lot of stuff about the dark night of the soul and learning how to walk in darkness with faith and trust. Again, synchronicity is one of the ways that we can work within ourselves to establish that faith and trust. Not in someone else's teaching. To establish faith and trust in the immediacy and intimacy of our own direct experience. The way that life is showing up for us, the way that life is inviting us. When I start these conversations and I say, take what's meant for you and leave the rest behind, make it uniquely yours, this is why. Your journey is uniquely yours. I'm under no presupposition that this is the only conversation you're having in your life about these kinds of things. This is one of many puzzle pieces. This is synchronistic in and of itself. This, our meeting, our being here together and present together right now, sharing these words. We're all serving life right here, right now, just by being together in this space. And this, combined with everything else that happened to you today, will become a different you tomorrow. And that's the beauty. There's an incredible beauty and aliveness in being willing to encounter life in such a way. All right, so I'll open it up again a little bit more for conversation. Any other points or anything else anyone wants to share in regards to these topics?
Kind of miss the timing of this is a little off. I should have shared this 15 minutes ago.
Well, I was talking, so.
That's all right. So anyway, but we're talking about dreams.
Yes.
And I was looking for an apartment. This is, I think, in my 20s or something.
Mm.
And sleeping on the floor, sleeping on the couches of friends, whatever. And I had a dream of the name. I woke with the name of a town that I never heard of. And that morning I said, has anyone ever heard of Ludlowville? Anyway, so we pull out a newspaper to the apartments for rent ad, and there just happens to be an ad for an apartment in Ludlowville. And so I was with a girlfriend at the time. We drive to the the house for rent, and it's just the wrong place. It's too expensive, huge bill for heat. I go, and we were into this. Oh, there's got to be this meeting, this celestial meeting. I just dreamt Vaudeville, and so we're ready to leave. And he goes, wait a minute. There's this. I think there's this person on the hill who has this house for rent, and I think they want $80 a month. And we look at each other. I mean, this was even 40 years ago. This is absurd price. And it turns out it came through, and I lived there 3 years. And then I want to keep this short, but it's a pretty interesting story. The house is unfurnished. The girlfriend's sitting in a coffee shop the next day. Who the booth that she's that her back is to. It's one of these, is the back of the captain of the Salvation Army. She says, do you know where we could find some furniture? He says, well, someone just died and they're leaving all the furniture in their house to the Salvation Army. You can go take whatever you want. And we go to the place and it's, oh my God, it's OMG. Every possible mission style, quality, hard, furniture. And it was perfect the house was completely filled up with furniture just because of who she sat next to in a coffee shop the day after we got the apartment. And jumping in time, I was looking for a job. So this is a complete non-segue. Living in Ludlow, I'm driving to Ithaca, which is where I was living. And I was ready to make 200 copies of a resume as a hitchhiker. And I could probably count the times I picked up a hitchhiker on one hand, with 5 fingers because, I'm just careful. And I said to I think I was still with my girlfriend, I said, I guess I have to pick up this hitchhiker. And we pick up the hitchhiker. It turns out he's a manager of an advertising agency. We start talking about advertising. I said, well, rather than ask me, I just happen to be making 200 copies of my resume. Why don't you read my resume? He goes, oh my gosh, oh, you did this. And he calls me up the next day to say, I took the liberties of making an appointment with you, with the head of the advertising agency. I get the job, and it changed my career for the next probably 30, 40 years. Both started with a dream of the town and picking up a hitchhiker and meeting the Salvation Army. It was just completely synchronous and bizarre. So thanks for letting me take some time to share that.
That is so absolutely beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That's a really perfect example. Some of the things that I gave as examples were very small and really confined to the immediacy of specific instances. But you're talking about, how in hindsight, right? How in hindsight you can see how life was taking care of you and making sure that everything was happening exactly the way it needed to for you. And that's incredibly beautiful. Thank you for sharing. That's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Elliot. That's an outstanding story.
It's hard, huh? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, oh no, yeah, it's meant to be, I guess. It really was. Okay, well now I can be brave enough to share one of my experiences.
Please do.
Elliot paved the way. Just a few. Okay, I'll give you an example. So just about 6 weeks ago, I was driving and my husband and I were thinking about moving, buying property. We're thinking about upgrading. And so, because we're from Washington, D.C., I'd like to move closer to the city. And he, because that's where he has his job and he's been looking for work. So just to get into the whole IT field. Anyway, so I was like, well, maybe we shouldn't look closer to the city. Who knows? You might get a job in Quantico at the base, which is for military base farm and get a lot more for our money, 15 minutes down south. And sure enough, my husband got an interview with the FBI for cybersecurity on the Quantico base and was hired in Quantico. So that just happened within the last 5 weeks. Another example is I had no idea what girlfriend in New York was like, oh, talk about synchronicities. And I'm like, what is a synchronicity? And now I'm doing this class and finding out all about synchronicity. So it's like, it just can't be a coincidence, And I was having that conversation with Carrie probably about 8 months ago, and she uses the word synchronicity a lot. So she was the one that kind of opened the doorway. And then I was like, wow, I'm actually taking a course where, you know, the next session is all about synchronicities. I mean, I had to Google it and look it up. So yeah, so my husband got the job in Quantico literally 2 weeks ago, and I was joking around with him saying, you know, you might get a job south, and he actually got a job proposal with the exact, you know, just he's doing a career change. So just everything he wanted kind of fell into place. Yeah. So one more.
Please.
And 5 years ago, when I moved to Australia, okay, so I had a best friend of mine exactly 5 years ago, Samantha Attard. So I lost her to suicide, and she had been battling with depression for many years. So anyway, I moved back to Australia. I got to spend a good year of my life with her, moving back, and it was beautiful. So when we were in Australia, we were looking for a property, and then we bought a home and looking into an investment property. It's just kind of how the market back in 2012 just kind of allowed it to be in Australia. It was a real buyer's market when we moved back to Australia. Anyway, so I said, oh, I need guidance. Sammy, if you're listening, her name was Samantha. Sammy, if you're listening, you know, if it's meant to be for me to get an investment property, you know, just give me a sign. I mean, I got really desperate. I'd been looking. I wasn't sure what to do with this money. And sure enough, found a perfect property on Attard Avenue. And till this day, we have an investment property on Attard Avenue. And my best friend's name was Samantha Attard.
That's perfect.
So it's those kind of wow factors that I was like, okay, there's something more to this universe than coincidences. Okay, I'll stop talking now.
No, that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Those were all really wonderful examples. And you know, as I said before, for the first year of my awakening experience, so that, you know, I had this tremendous falling away and shift in perception. And the year after, it was just swimming in a sea of synchronicity. It was, and as somebody who was an atheist, as somebody who was very scientifically minded, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be speaking on these subjects or sharing them or teaching if they had not been so incredible, so miraculous in their impact. And you know, it was undeniable that something was at work in my life that I did not understand and had never been prepared for. My upbringing as a child in the Catholic Church, and even the year I spent studying Buddhism, did not prepare me for what we could call mystical experience. And synchronicity is an example of mystical experience. The falling away and the seeing this, you know, beyond separateness. And I use the term mystical experience, very practical. It's very pragmatic. It's just life. It's not special. But in those moments, it was miraculous. And these moments of synchronicity can be miraculous. And then when we share these stories amongst ourselves, right, we all feel it. When Elliot shares his story or Patricia shares her story, we can all feel it. We can all connect with, oh yeah, I've had those moments. Oh yeah, I have seen in looking back, you know, perhaps something that I was dealing with at a certain time was a big struggle and there were a lot of problems and it seemed very difficult at the time. But then in hindsight, I look back and I see it could not have been any other way. It is exactly what it had to be. I also generally tend to find, and I'm going to say this very carefully, there's a show called My Name is Earl on Netflix. I think it's on Netflix, or Hulu. I had watched the show years and years ago. It's about a guy who's a criminal who gets hit by a car and suddenly gets exposed to karma. He wins like lots of money, and he starts to try to do good in his life to make up for all the wrong that he did. So he has an old friend of his who was a criminal, and he's trying to get his friend to join him in this crusade. And his friend is like, sure, I'll try this karma thing if I get everything I want. And like 4 hours later, he's like, I don't know about this karma thing. It's not really working for me. I'm still not getting what I want. I don't think this is worthwhile. So I'm saying this because when we hear like, oh, if I surrender, I'll get what I want, right? The mind can be very attractive to a mind. And a mind that's trying to adopt an orientation in order to get something isn't surrendering. So I just want to articulate that. But what I find in my experience is that out of surrender, tremendously beautiful and wonderful things can happen. Life begins to respond to our state of surrender. And it gives us exactly what we need. It gives us all the difficulties and challenges, but it also takes care of us along the way. And the stories that both of you shared are very consistent with that. It's like when the surrender is coming forward from a very authentic place, a very deep recognition, a willingness, a sincerity, life is responding to that. The fact that my girlfriend and I found each other, she lives very much in the same understanding I do. You know, after we are the same person in so many respects, not just in the non-dual understanding where we're all one, but in our experience of ourselves as unique entities, you know, existing in this experience of life. It's like we're the same person. Everything aligns in such a beautiful way. And we had to go through so much in other relationships with other people to prepare us to be present in the relationship that we have now, that we both value so beautifully. Yeah. So there, you know, life is giving us exactly what we need. It acknowledges and recognizes, you know, the depth of sincerity and earnestness here. It's not, I'm really want to make clear, I'm not saying life rewards you for earnestness and sincerity. That's not what I'm saying. You can be clearly earnest and deeply sincere, and life may still have other plans for you. That's just the way it is. And if you're in a state of surrender, you're surrendering to whatever those plans may be, however they may come forward, right? Jesus lived in a deep state of surrender. Guess what, right? It didn't all work out for him, so to speak, or his disciples, right? There are many instances of awakened beings giving voice to what needed attention in the world, only to be condemned and put to death as a result of it. So again, I'm not saying that life rewards us for sincerity and surrender, but what I am saying is that for many of us, as we go through this process of beginning to open up and beginning to let go and beginning to allow life to offer itself to us, things can become really beautiful. Things can happen that are very surprising and miraculous and mysterious and incredible, right? It can just, our life can start to take on a new tone. And synchronicities as they're happening, and then when we look upon them in hindsight, we can see, right? This is the last thing that I'll say this evening. We can see how all of the things that have happened in my life up to this point happened for a reason. And I understand, recognize, and can appreciate the reason that these things were happening. Because I wouldn't be where I am now if those things hadn't occurred. For good or ill, whatever it was, it gave rise to what's here now. Ah, wonderful. Now, when you find yourself in difficulty, or you find yourself suffering or in pain or dealing with a challenge, you can bring your understanding into what you're facing. You can say to yourself, I may not understand this and I may not like it, but I know based on my past experience that life always knows what it's doing. This sort of mental machinery, this thought process alone can create a capacity within us to meet life on life's terms. It's an aspect or a quality of surrender to say, oh, I've seen that life knows what it's doing. Life must still know what it's doing right now. Life always knows what it's doing. And when you trust in life always knowing what it's doing, then you're not really likely to be in conflict with life so much anymore. You're not so likely to be making demands of life. Life, I need you to look like this. God, we get down on our hands and knees and we tell God exactly what God must do. And God goes, who's serving who? I'm curious. One of the most profound prayers, right, of many enlightened beings is, or somebody like Jesus, I will to will your will, thy will be done, right? This is not about me. This is not about me getting what I want from you. This is me living in service to you. There's the story of Hanuman, right, within the Hindu tradition, right? And Hanuman, one time Krishna was asking Hanuman who he was. And Hanuman said, "Oh Lord, when I remember who I am you. And when I forget who I am, I live in service to you." That's the play. That's the play. That's what this paying attention to synchronicity can elicit. All right, we've got just a couple of more minutes. Is there anything else anybody wants to add, or any other questions or anything anybody wants to bring up? All right then. So next week, our conversation is going to be about being wary of our traps. And I've highlighted a few of those things this evening in our conversation, but we'll get more into that. And it might be a shorter conversation than some of the other ones that we've had, because being wary of our traps, there's not a whole lot of meat to it necessarily, but it is such an important part of the conversation. It's such an essential aspect of the sort of give and take, the tug of war, the teeter-totter effect that life has as we're going through this process of awakening. So that'll be our conversation next week. And I am thinking about adding, so next week we have being wary of our traps, and then the following week is the dance of fear and surrender, which is the last session in the series. And so I was thinking I might add one last session that's really just an open session, right? Just for if people want to send questions in advance and I can speak to those, or if people just want to have sort of a dialogue amongst ourselves together, I won't record that session, but it'll just be an opportunity for people who've been participating to have sort of like a little group closing, so to speak, and we can interact amongst ourselves and have people share from their own experiences, things that came forward as part of participating in this, but other places where you found wisdom that's been useful in your own life as well. So I'll keep everybody apprised of whether or not that happens. I'll at least open it up and we'll see what the level of interest is.
Okay.
Other than that, though, thank you all for coming this evening, for participating, for sharing, for your stories. It was absolutely delightful to hear from you and to hear, for sharing some of your dreams, for sharing from, some of your life experiences, sharing from some of the things that have happened in your life. It was really beautiful and drives home again the shared nature of this experience. How we are all along for the ride together. All right. We'll see you all next week. Thank you so much.
Thank
Be
you,
well
Brett.
and take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.